November, you know, is Thanksgiving month. And it's also when we remember in the church year the dead in particular. So we dwell at the end of the church year on the thoughts that we also are going to leave this earth. What God has in mind, we have in mystical writings, and I don't pretend to be able to interpret that. But I know that the world will come to an end and Christ will come in glory. And I don't know when it is, but I know that you and I are limited on this earth. Does the date December 21st, that is next month, do you know that that is considered by some people who measure these matters, that that is supposed to be the end of the world? Have you read that? Seen that? Yeah. Well, I don't take it very seriously either, but I do take seriously that I myself am not going to be around too long, because you have only so much time to live. So I would like you and me to enjoy our life, not to be worried and frightened all the time about death and hell and punishment and judgment. I really don't think that's the main message from our Lord. His message is always how I love you and therefore you're okay. I want you to enjoy my friendship, my love for you. I was reading the other day, there was a great philosopher in several hundred years ago, Immanuel Kant. And this is what he had to say, which I took down to share with you. He says, laughter is one of three things that God has given us, together with hope and sleep, to counteract the weariness of life. So here in this church, we didn't used to deliberately try to make you laugh, but I've broken through that ceiling, I guess. And so much so that at the Mass, after the Mass this morning, a little server said, "You didn't tell no jokes." And so, you know, so I certainly will. But you can tell jokes, hopefully you make people laugh, or you can bring toys like this. The toy I had last night broke. The toy I had at the first Mass wasn't very loud. And so coming in here today, Debbie, a good fellow, passed this on to me to share with you. Laughter begets laughter, and it's no longer a sin to laugh in church. So here is the cause of your laughter for the moment, if I can do this. Come on. Okay. Wait. What? All right, all right, all right. Yeah, I know. You know, that is very risky business, and I just sort of have a feeling that Bishop Lennon doesn't do this. So, along with that forced laughter, which really is good for the soul, good for the body. You know that, don't you? And if your person never laughs, I'm sorry for you, and because laughter is so essential. I have, since the little boy wanted jokes as well, maybe you do. This man said, when I die, I want to go peacefully and quietly in my sleep, like my grandfather did, and not screaming and shouting like the passengers in his car at the time. And I have told this many times, and not everybody thinks it's very funny. But I laugh every time, I really do. Even in the car, I'll tell myself. There were two elderly women who met after not seeing each other for a very long time. And one said, "How's your husband?" Ted. Ted died last week. He went out to the garden to dig up a lettuce for dinner, and he had a heart attack, and he dropped dead. "Oh, my dear, I'm so sorry. What did you do?" She said, "I opened a can of peas instead." You get one more about death. These three old men were discussing how they wanted to die, and you may have heard this, but one was 75, and he says, "I want to die quickly in a car crash." And the guy that was 85 said, "I want to die quickly too, maybe in a plane crash." And the guy that was 95 said, "I want to die quickly too. I want to be shot by a jealous husband." So we're trying to approach death the way I think God meant it, not scared so much as looking forward to be in the arms of God. Won't that be great? Anyway, it does help to sustain us in this life if we realize that life is transitory. The last 2 weeks, it was all about Sandy and the winds and all the stuff, losing this and that. Well, there are still bad results. I've seen it along the road and so, but in the end, it is transitory. We'll be talking about it later, but it's sort of over right now for most of us. We should not be constantly staring at death. And I have to say that I really need to be told this because at my age, I do that a lot. I want to have everything, and life is always going to end incomplete. That's the way we were made. And so, certainly, we don't want to be looking all the time at death and hell. I certainly had that pressed into my mind so much all my life. In some ways, I think it did me good because I was afraid to sin, because then I would go to hell. And so finally I told that to go to hell. I am not going to sin, but I'm going to try to have a more joyous life. So a cheerful realization that my life will come to an end here on this earth sooner or later is a healthy thought. Just don't want to dwell on it, but it is not really the end of life. It is what our Lord said at the end. It is the consummation of your life. You have consumed up all your energies and all your talents and so on, and you are finished, which is what Jesus said on the cross. First, he forgave everybody. He says, "I forgive you." They didn't have to do a whole lot. The sinner didn't even, he hardly knew Christ. He hadn't done much. But he said, "Will you remember me?" And our Lord said, "Sure I will, this very day." So those are comforting thoughts for me. And then at the end he said, "It's over, it's consummated. I have done what my Father sent me to do." And so he breathes his last. That's a very perfect way to leave. It's not the end, it's a consummation of what you were called on this earth to do. And so I want to say then that death, I read this, death is not the end, but it is a key, I like that word, it is a key that unlocks the door to our true happiness. We're never totally happy here. There's a longing inside of us for something more than we will ever have on this earth. And God created us that way. We say He left that space in our heart for himself. And so those are healthy thoughts and beliefs to get through this life with more joy and smile and, just do the best you can every day and can the rest. So we also say this prayer, our hearts were made for thee, O Lord, and they will not rest until they rest in thee. And so that is the lesson today, that in order to get through this world happily, knowing I'm going to leave someday, I'm going to do all I can while I'm here, and then I'm going to die, I'm going to be consummated, and I'm going to see God. Our hearts were made for thee, O Lord, and they will not rest until they rest in thee. That thought also helps me to stop thinking that one more purchase or one more love or one more car or one more house is really going to fill up my soul. It can't, because we were made for God, and he alone can satisfy the hunger in the human heart. So be sure to have some toys around while you make your trip.